morning. This is the weekly Jupyter IPython dev meeting. It's May 10th, 2016. We can kick it off with, I'll just give a short report on how the roadmap review is going. Matthias, Fernando, and I sat down and went through both the GitHub roadmap repo and also the hackpad, and currently we're doing a lot of reconciliation between the two. So I just want to remind folks that it's super helpful for us, for you to transfer your hackpad notes over to the GitHub repo. There are some pieces of work that are missing. So most of the work's there, but if you have a project that you're working on that's described in the hackpad, it should also be reflected in the GitHub roadmap. And you can do a pull request to get that in there. And that's what I have.
Awesome. I'll go next. Just a couple of quick things from the operations side. I sent out an email to everyone related to the events calendar. I'm looking to publish a public Google Calendar on May 17th. So if you have anything that you'd like to be included on there, just send it to me by the 16th. About 10 events on there so far, but I'm sure there's a lot more. I'll also be adding events kind of just from my own research. And even if you're not attending these events, if you're aware of events that might be interesting to the Jupyter community, please send those my way. We're also in the process of transitioning our newsletter to Medium, and just really briefly on that, I think we've mostly worked through the technical questions. The archiving for the content on that is not the greatest, but it's something that I think we have a process in place for now. And the next step on that is creating a custom subdomain. A little bit stalled on that yesterday as far as updating the repo yesterday, but I don't know between Brian suggested I work with Matthias, Min, or Thomas to create that custom subdomain. So any volunteers within those 3 people would be great.
Yeah, I can do that.
What's that?
I can do that.
Okay, great. And that's pretty much it. We have the content ready for the next drop. I just need to work through the logistics of actually sending that out. And Medium has an integration with Twitter. So we'll have an Insta following for that newsletter. It shows about 1,800 people who are our followers on Twitter who also have Medium accounts. They, of course, have to select the within their settings, they have to allow people that they follow to send them letters, which is how we'll be getting an email out to the followers that looks mostly like a newsletter. So we won't get all of those people, allowing us to email them, but we should be able to build a following for that newsletter pretty quickly, hopefully. And that's it for me. If you have ideas on stories for upcoming newsletters, please send them my way. Since I'm not a technical person, the easiest way for me to receive those stories is if you come up with a headline, a short headline, a couple of sentences, and then a link to a blog post or to the, wherever it is that people can get more information. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Anna. Shall we hit the continuum, folks? How are you guys doing?
Yeah, I can go first.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris.
Sure. So I'm still working on the big repo merge for Phosphor. That's going well. I'm nearly done with Phosphor UI. which is basically spelling the end of the merge, and then we can move on from there. My last week was mostly a wash because I was moving from New York to Texas, so I'm in Texas now, so that's good. I'll give a bit of an update for Brian as well, since he was not, I don't think he's going to be here today because he's still at Microsoft, but last week he demoed Jupyter Lab to 2 different teams at Microsoft, and that went really exceptionally well. So both of those teams are on board. They're basically wanting to make some plugins for Jupyter Lab to manage Azure resources, and so we should be getting some traction with them and some good feedback and feature requests and a good driving use case for that. Well, that's it for mine.
Thank you.
So I have been continuing to work on the port of the console, and there's an open PR that I linked to in the HackPad if anyone's interested. The feature I'm working on now is the tooltip that the kernel gives you when you basically to give you hints on functions. That is, I think, going to be done this week and should be merged in so everyone can play with it in the Jupyter.js notebook repo. Also, any outstanding IPyWidgets issues, I think, are resolved, so I can concentrate fully on the console this week. That's it for me.
Thanks. So Nick, do you want to give us an update on your planning for, is it Jupyter Days out there in Atlanta? Is that something you're still working on?
Yeah, we're still working on that. We had a little sit down with Anna on that, and we're pretty solid on the venue. We're going to scope it down from a full 2 days probably to an evening social that might be a film screening if we can line up the right content for it. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty local. We haven't started trying to identify keynote yet, but really what we want to try and do is maybe go about it in a very transparent kind of way. I know there have been some attempts at different times to try and get some of the ego out of selection of speakers and things like that, and we're considering trying to do some of that stuff up on GitHub to get people to help us build the day that they want to go to. But the venue at Georgia Tech is solid. We're going to be talking with the guy on Thursday to get that squared away, and yeah, so looking forward to that.
What's the date again?
That is what we need to hammer out. Okay. I have visibility into parts of the calendar at the venue, but not all of them. So, but at this point, we are now looking at early August because we didn't pull the trigger fast enough on the July piece. So, it'll be lovely in Atlanta, I'm sure. Just but it'll be all right. They got air conditioning.
All right, great.
Other than that, nothing else much to report. Just kind of a little bit of MB Dime stuff.
Cool. Thank you. So Damian, we haven't heard from you in a while. What are you up to? Surprise. He's checked out. Okay. Who else wants to give an update? Something that can be shared with the group.
I'll just mention that Steve and I have been working a lot on the notebook architecture for Jupyter Lab, the execution architecture for documents in Jupyter Lab. We think we have a pretty good model at this point, and we're actually implementing it to see if we really think it's a good model. But we're happy to discuss it with others. I think we've run it by Brian and Chris and Men, at least. And we're happy to discuss that with anybody that wants to.
Has Fernando been part of those conversations?
I don't think Fernando was on when we ran it by Chris and Men and Brian.
Okay,
but right now what we're trying to do basically is get some actual experience on the ground implementing it, and that'll inform tweaks to it, and then it'd be a good idea to run it by Brian and Men and Chris again too.
Yeah.
Say notebook execution, you mean like the actual the handlers on the Tornado side, or where
No, all client side. Yeah, this is how to deal with documents in the browser that possibly have execution semantics and how to associate kernels with them in a really generic way.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Hey, Min, do you want to talk about the meeting we had earlier this week with pins?
Yeah. So yesterday, I guess, seems a long time ago. We had a meeting with some folks in Canada who are doing hosting compute resources for Canadian mathematical science researchers and classes on things, and we had a good meeting about doing Jupyter Hub for that and scaling issues and how to deploy Jupyter Hub resources for I think the term used was all researchers in Canada. So we have some new challenges to deal with, but it was a good meeting and lots of good stuff for mostly people other than us to do, which is good.
will it have to be internationalized into French for it to be used in that capacity?
We did talk about that, yes, and so they may have people who can help with the internationalization stuff, which and we've had I believe someone from IBM pop onto the enhanced proposal for internationalization, so I think there's a reasonable chance that we might actually get work started on that before too long.
Wow.
That'll be good.
Is this similar to setting up like a Jupyter Hub for NERSC? Like a Jupyter Hub that's a service for people who want to do computation?
If NERSC were it's more similar to what we're doing. I can never remember the XSeed. So we're working with UCSD folks to put Jupyter Hub in front of XSeed, which is kind of all NSF computing resources. It's more analogous to that it's federated across computing resources at many universities and something called Compute Canada. I think that's that, and we had a good meeting at PyData with I gave a tutorial, Thomas gave a talk, and good conversations there. But you could find videos and stuff online, so I don't need to talk about those.
Okay. Do you mind just sending out a link or to Anna
sure.
so we can hit it in the newsletter?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool, thanks.
I guess I should just mention Sylvan also gave a talk at PyData London on pqplot and widgets in general that was pretty well received from what I understand.
Yeah, it was very well received. It was a good talk.
His infamous flight simulator demo.
Yeah. Always got to make sure that one makes an appearance.
I finally got the point of the controller widget.
Sylvan really wanted to use his game controller at work. Yep.
It's a fun hook. All right, I have just a short update from Damian. He says he has very bad sound right now, but he's working on full-time continuum internal stuff. So not too much to share in the open space. And that's his update. Who else do we have here? Oh, hey, Pete, do you want to give an update on what you're working on?
There's really not too much other than what I wrote there. We did a first NPM release of the dashboard server. I thought was the most interesting thing. So it's actually up on NPM.js. I talked to John a little while back to make sure that we don't have a Jupyter namespace or anything. I've sort of been out of that conversation, but if it needs to move or if I've done something wrong, just let me know. We can move the package. That was the main thing. Not much else going on. Just bug fixes across the board, that kind of stuff.
Sounds good. And finally, Thomas. PyData Thomas.
Yeah, the main thing that I've put on the hackpad is the PyData London conference, which Min already mentioned.
Sounds good. Okay, so that's pretty much the whole roster, unless, well, we didn't ask David. David Fulmer, I don't know if you're just listening today or.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem. Are there any big blockers that we need to pull Fernando or Brian for? Anything we can help out on our end here at Berkeley?
Not for me, but I did think of something else that would be helpful from the group is I'm looking to connect with other administrators or operations people within open source software projects. So if you have contacts in that arena that you'd like to share with me, just want to connect with others who are maybe doing something similar to what I'm doing. That would be great if you could share.
Okay. And I wanted to try a screen share really quick of my draft roadmap. If you guys have about 2 minutes, I can pull it up like this. Not quite sure how to get out of it. So Min, maybe you can help me out when I want to get out of it. Can you see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is just a very bare bones version of the roadmap that we're working toward. And what I did was I took the information that's in the GitHub repo, roadmap repo, and just started binning work into 2-month increments. So you can see on the left side is kind of the project or the group of work that we're focused on, and then going over to your right, we have next, which we've binned as work to be conducted in May and June. The next +1 is July and August, and then kind of the future is everything else. And we'll just start moving the work through these 2-month work blocks. So under each of these projects, we have the specific work or features that will be developed. Now, with some of these projects or products that we're producing, the notation was version numbers instead of next +1. So I tried to line those up as best that I could with the next +1 milestones. So take a look at those. I can share this link with folks and you can start making comments. Actually, the best thing to do would be to make the comment in the GitHub repo. So you're updating the source file because this is just a view of the data. So it goes into IPy widgets, declarative widgets, traitlets, MBconvert. And you can see, especially looking at the next column, that the version numbers are very different depending on the project. So I want to make sure that what you guys have in mind for these releases line up with these milestones that we've identified to bin the work at this stage.
I don't think this kind of timescale was what was generally had in mind.
Okay.
I mainly mean that the timescale for each thing can be very different from each other.
Right.
So that next and next +1 might be 2 or 3 months for one project and might be a year for another one.
Okay.
I don't know how best to represent that.
Yeah.
We can either rephrase kind of what we mean by that in terms of time, or we can make it so that those categories aren't tied to time. But I think in general, what's under those categories does not necessarily map to that time scale, at least the way it's written right now.
Sure. And I had a suspicion that was true. And I wanted to put it up in front of you guys just to get your feedback and start to work toward getting realistic timeframes on some of that work.
Yeah.
So we can continue to work on that in the coming weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So what I might do, we also have Hold on one sec. So we also have the results of the survey where we split up the teams. We didn't split up the teams. We created teams. So we basically, based on folks' responses to the survey, we arranged them in. We arranged you in the teams where you said you could do different levels of work. So we're here. We have kernel and events and user engagement and widgets, and then folks, volunteered to take on a leadership role there. So that's another piece that we put together. And then I created just a very drafty team schedule for the summer because I know people are traveling a lot. So I have, different people, different team members traveling and at conferences and just in one place to have just an idea of where people are at when we're, trying to get work done. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. Do you see me or do you see my screen?
See you.
We see you.
Okay.
We see you.
Okay, good. It's newfangled technology. So that's the progress we've made on the roadmap. We're going to continue to refine it here. It's definitely not perfect at this point, but I did want to show progress and get some early feedback. So, we make sure to make, micro changes and instead of dropping the whole thing on you at once and having a lot of things be wrong. So we'll continue to work with you on the timing of all these different initiatives that we have going on.
Jamie, I'm not sure where to put the port of the Qt console because it's not really next version of the Qt console. It's a web version that is currently residing in Jupyter.js notebook. So I don't know which project next version that really is, but it's not in the roadmap right now, and it probably should be.
Okay, so that might be a useful note to make right in the roadmap itself.
Okay.
Do a pull request and update that with the README file, I guess. So it's very explicit.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, put it out there.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Okay, does anybody else have anything they want to share? Memories triggered by something I talked about in the roadmap? No? Sweet memories of our dev conference? No? Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for your time. I'm going to turn off the recording.